Bibliophiles of the internet. My name is Adriana and today I'm here to bring you my April wrap-up. So April turned out to be a pretty productive reading month and I have a lot of material to get through here, so I say let's just get started, shall we? The first book I completed in April was The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson. To put it simply, this is a YA contemporary about a young girl named Lenny who has recently lost her sister Bailey, and basically this story is about how she is processing that grief and how she's dealing with that mourning in sometimes unorthodox ways. I don't want to say too much about this book because I actually did a very thorough Goodreads review, which I am unnaturally proud of, so I will link that down below. But in short, I really loved and appreciated this novel. I think it's a very powerful, very moving look at the different types of mourning and how different kinds of people can process grief in so many different ways. And in many ways, I think it's also about the many forms of loss. So I thought it was a really great book, very distinctive setting, very vivid characters. I just loved the whole thing. So I ended up giving this a very strong 4 out of 5 stars, and Jandy Nelson has definitely bumped herself up to auto by author status for sure. The next book I read was a middle grade book, and that was Rooftoppers by Katherine Rundell. This is an adventure story about a young girl named Sophie who, as an infant, was found floating down the river in a cello case. And as she grows up, she tries to track down her birth mother, which in turn leads her to the rooftops of Paris, where she finds this secret society of impoverished children who live on top of the rooftops and call themselves rooftoppers. I quite enjoyed this story. I thought it was really cute and fun, and I like the writing style a lot because it errs more on the side of magical realism, which I'm all about. So I really enjoyed this book for the most part, and I ended up giving Rooftoppers 3.5 out of 5 stars. After that, I checked out the first 5 volumes in the Chew series by John Layman and Rob Guillory, and I checked all 5 out of my library. If for some reason you don't know what the Chew series is about, it's this fantastic blend of crime, mystery, thriller, and sci-fi. It's about this special FDA agent named Tony Chew who is sebopathic, which means that whenever he ingests something, he gets psychic readings about it and he knows everything that's ever happened to it, which makes it very difficult for him to have a meal with all the processed foods, but makes him very handy on a murder scene if he can just have a little taste of the victim and find out what happened to them. So the Chew series has definitely been circulating around BookTube, and all of the hype is so well deserved because this is a fantastic comic series, so original, very quirky, dark undertones but very humorous, great characters. I could go on. And what I think is really fantastic about this series is Tony Chew's constant moral dilemma, because on one hand, obviously, he would rather not taste anybody's corpse, but on the other hand, he really wants to bring about justice and to make sure that the right people get landed behind bars. So on one hand, he has a really strong respect for the law, but on the other hand, the means that he has to go to in order to uphold the law are very drastic. I immensely enjoyed every single volume that I read of the Chew series last month, and I gave every one of them 4 stars or above. On a very different note, after that I read Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. This novel is about a main character named Toru who is reminiscing on his first love, who was actually his best friend's girlfriend. So basically he's remembering how deeply he was in love with her, but their relationship was very complicated because she had an extended stay in a mental facility, among other things. This book is definitely not plot driven. It's more driven by the characters and their emotional journeys, but I found it to be such a page turner. I could not stop reading every single time I picked up this book. And in short, I think that Murakami very beautifully and very masterfully navigates the intersections between coming of age, mental illness, sexuality, mourning, grief, all of these complex emotions. So I ended up giving Norwegian Wood a very strong 4 out of 5 stars. And again, after that, on another completely different note, I read the first 5 volumes in the Owari no Seraph series, also known as Seraph of the End by Tagaya Kagami and Yamato Yamamoto. Owari no Seraph is about a world where 2 terrible things happened simultaneously. And the first is that a virus struck the earth and killed off most of the population. And the second is that at the same time, vampires rose to power to enslave the rest of the surviving humans. There's a really great paranormal edge. There's a lot of mystery. I just think it's a really fascinating series and I can't read it fast enough. The only thing I'm really missing so far in this series is world building. I wish there were some more backstory about how the world got to this point and where vampires came from, etc., etc. But I have a feeling maybe more of that will be slowly revealed as the series goes on. What do I know? So even though this series is not necessarily unique or fresh or a new idea, I still really enjoyed it, and I gave the first 5 volumes 4 stars or better. After that, I read a comic that I checked out of my library, and that was The Gigantic Beard That Was Evil by Stephen Collins. The main character in this story lives on an island called Here, which is a very strict and orderly place, until this insane beard starts spewing out of his face and quite literally takes over the island of Here. I absolutely love this comic. I have nothing but great things to say about it, and I will link my Goodreads review for this comic down below in case you want more in-depth details. It's a really fantastic and smart satire because on one hand it's very humorous, but on the other hand it's definitely a very strong social commentary. As you can tell from the synopsis, this is a very whimsical story, but at the same time, the inner conflicts that the main character is facing, as well as the general fear of the unknown, are very universal themes. Plus, there was a lot of experimenting with paneling and with text and with the use of space and light versus darkness. I thought it was just an amazing comic. So I very highly recommend The Gigantic Beard That Was Evil, and I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. After that, I read Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, and I buddy read this with my awesome friend Penelope from Penelope's Picks. So this book is about a woman named Libby Day, whose mother and 2 sisters were murdered in a satanic sacrifice at the hands of her brother. And now that her brother Ben has been behind bars for a while and she's grown up, she finds herself mixed in with this secret society called the Kill Club, who are a group of people who are really obsessed with famous crimes and murders. And getting involved in the Kill Club actually gets Libby to start questioning whether her brother is actually the murderer or not. Just like in Gone Girl, I really love and admire how Gillian Flynn plays with both timelines and perspective, how she jumps back and forth from the present to the past, and how a lot of this is told from Libby's point of view, but also then from her mother Patty's point of view, and also from her brother Ben's point of view. That to me created such a fantastic and dynamic mystery that kept me guessing. I legitimately could not guess where this book was going or who did what or what was gonna happen. Honestly, there's just so much to discuss in terms of this book, and again, I did a very thorough Goodreads review, which I will link down below in case you want more of my thoughts. But needless to say, this is definitely one of my favorite books that I've read so far in 2015, and I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. On a much lighter note, I very briefly want to talk about Howls Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, which I actually reread this April. Howls Moving Castle is about a young girl named Sophie who is turned into a 90-year-old woman, and on her way to figure out how to undo this spell, she somehow ends up working for Howl, who is a notorious wizard. I don't want to say too much about this book because I feel like most of you already know that this is one of my favorite stories of all time, hands down. It is absolutely incredible, and the main character Sophie is by far one of the most important fictional characters ever. I really just wanted to say that I loved this book even more the second time around. I got so much more out of it on a personal level, on an entertainment level. I caught so many more details and little bits of characterization and relationship building. I think it was amazing. Last year when I read this book for the first time, I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm here to tell you that I am amending that to the rightful 5 out of 5 stars. And finally, the last book that I read in April was the Book of Unknown Americans by Cristina Henriquez. The main family of this story, the Rivera family, I believe, came from Mexico to the United States because their daughter Maribel had this kind of mental disability, and so they were going to receive better education and better medical treatment for her in the States as opposed to Mexico. And it's basically about their experience coming to America and how difficult it is for them to live in a place where they don't know the language and where they don't know anybody, and they're completely alienated from anything that they've known before. I really think that the way culture and ethnic difference was portrayed in this story was very authentic, very genuine, very real, and very visceral. And especially, I think this book does a great job of showing how language is such an integral part of our day-to-day lives. And when you don't speak the language, or when other people are unwilling to communicate with you, there are so many things that we take for granted that just become that much harder. I had a lot of problems with the antagonists because I felt like they were not properly developed, and I felt like they were forced into the story rather than just organically occurring throughout the plot. And I thought the end of the story was very melodramatic, so that did knock my rating down a little bit, but I still really enjoyed this story overall. So I ended up giving the Book of Unknown Americans 3.5 out of 5 stars. So that was a lot of books to talk about, but those were all of the books I read in April. So please let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of the books I talked about today, or please let me know what was your favorite thing that you read in April. But that is everything I had for this wrap-up video, so thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page.